guys? I hope you're doing well. Today we're going to be diving into what I think is probably the best, if not one of the best, silent home guitar rigs that you could possibly create. I've been slowly developing this rig for many, many years now, and there's obviously tons I could kind of expand upon this with to make it even better, but at least like the meat and potatoes of this rig is absolutely fantastic in my opinion, and I wanted to share it with you. I've had questions about my rig in the past, what I kind of run for my studio here at home. And so today I just want to walk you step by step, kind of my normal setup that I've been using. There's a couple tweaks that's happening today that's a little bit new, a little bit different. I'm not sure if I'm going to always keep it this way, but the fundamentals of my rig is how it's been for probably close to a year and a half now. All right, so I'm going to walk you through step by step of what the rig is, and then I'll show you some different tones that I can create. All right, as you guys know, my main guitars are Les Pauls, and I've got two of them that I use. This is my 59 Reissue. And then this over here is a 2007 standard Les Paul. They're both fantastic. And then I use a coily guitar cable from Bullet Cables, and that runs to my current pedal board. It's not really much. I want to expand upon it in the future, but this really has all the sounds I want. I like a wah sometimes. I like a Univibe sometimes. That's a JHS Unicorn V2, I believe it's called. And that's the Dimebag wah. Dimebag Darrell, fantastic. My favorite wah. And then my favorite overdrive, I've done a lot of experimenting with overdrive pedals, and something about this PXO is just incredible in my opinion, from Phil X, J Rocket. The foundation of my sound though is really this amp right here into the Suhr Reactive load. This is the MGL 50 2204, 50 watt, just replica of kind of a late 70s, maybe early 80s JMP 50 watt. And it's fantastic. There is a little boost switch on there that adds a little bit of extra mojo, but it's pretty much stock on this one, and it's fantastic. That, of course, goes to the Suhr Reactive load, and that's the stock Suhr. It's a greenback with a 57 or something like that. So if you ever get the Suhr Reactive load IR, that is the IR that I always use. Not saying it's the best IR ever, but I've been happy with it. No reason to change. So basically, guitar goes into the amp, and then out of the speaker out goes into the Suhr Reactive load, and then out of the Suhr Reactive load goes right into my interface over here, which is a cable-y mess right now, but this is where it gets a little fancy. But that's the heart of my sound right there, is that it's very simple, not fancy. This is my favorite interface at the moment, Audient ID44. I love the functionality with these buttons over here, mono and mute and stuff like that, and then 4 preamps built in here. But what's cool is channels 1 and 2 have send and return, so before it hits the digital conversion, you can send out, which I am doing, so I'm going to walk you through that. You can hit the preamp here and then send out into other pieces of gear and then right back in. So what I'm sending out to, and this gets a little obnoxious to be quite honest, but this is what I use. So I actually have it sending out to a distressor compressor, which is a little bit, it's quite obnoxious. This does just a little bit of sauce. I don't compress my guitar that much. But to be honest, I find IRs direct or more dynamic than an actual cab is. And this helps get it a little bit closer to me. And it does it in a very transparent way, but also adds a little color. So if you're unfamiliar with the distressor, it's a very nice compressor. Different ratios, but it's also got some different things you can do in the detector circuit, which this right here attacks a little bit more of high mid frequencies, which I like doing to hopefully smooth out my guitar sound a little bit. And then there's these distortion modes, which I'm not going to go through later because it's through YouTube. It's very, very hard to hear, and it's it does something, but it's very, very slight. And by the time you hear it through YouTube, you're not going to really be able to hear it. But there's also plugins that you can use online if you're interested. So anyways, out of the ID44 interface send into this, I hit this with either 0 dBs of compression all the way to sometimes like 2 dBs of compression. I don't usually go too much more than that. And then this is where it gets interesting. So after that, there's 2 outs of this. The XLR goes back in to channel 2 of my interface. The other one goes out into the quad cortex up here right now. So let's stop real quick. When I go back to channel 2 there, that is completely dry, no reverb or delay. That's straight through the amp with a little bit of the distressor, and that's my dry sound, which we'll go over a little bit later. But the other split goes in here, and these are full wet effects. And I find just routing wise, using something like a modeler is the best for this. And we'll go through this more. But over on the Quad Cortex, got different reverbs, different delays, and they're on full wet mode. So this ends up hitting my guitar hits this. This makes it completely wet, either reverb or delay or chorus. And then that sends back to my interface on 3 and 4 over here. And then I record that. I'll show you in a second. I'm recording it right now. That's separate, and this is fully wet effects, reverb, delay, chorus, and whatnot. But this on 2 is completely dry guitar sound. And then I have my Logic setup where, you know, right now you can see me talking. I'm recording on the, where it says Vox. And I got guitar, that's my dry guitar, and then guitar verb, I just call it, which is my full wet effects. And then I have the computer audio, so that's where I record backing tracks through when I'm playing over it. But that's where it's hitting the system. That's literally the whole setup is that. All right, so that is the entire step-by-step of the rig. Really, the new feature is the Quad Cortex. I've been using this reverb, the Universal Audio, the UAFX Golden Reverberator, usually kind of just strictly just the reverb, doing the same thing the Quad Cortex is doing. But obviously this doesn't have delay or anything like that. And there's some things I love about the Quad Cortex in this situation. There's some things I don't like about it. But what's cool is I can spread out and parallel tons of effects where they're not interfering with each other. And then it still sums it all down to stereo. I'm trying to think of ways to do this with analog pedals, but it's just a lot of processing to be able to have a bunch of parallel signals summed down to stereo. Because usually it builds up to, like, if we had this rig in all analog, it would end up being 4, 6, at least 8 ends back in to keep it all in parallel at least, and tons of cabling. But with the Quad Cortex doing it all internally, it just takes 2 cables, which is fantastic. All right, so this is my guitar sound. And I'm actually hitting the distressor. I'm close to 2 dBs. My settings change on that quite often, so it's not always that. So yeah, that's my standard sound that you guys are always hearing from me. And then if I put an overdrive on, this is the boost side of the PXO. And then here's the overdrive. Then I got the Unicorn V2. And then of course the wah. So now let's turn the Quad Cortex on. I have a screen capture of it right now on the screen. Bunch of random, there's probably a more efficient way of doing this. But right now, all that's happening is a room reverb. I just turned a mono delay on right in the middle. If you're not listening to this in stereo, you're probably not gonna get the whole idea. And then I have this cool path where I wanted to add a chorus in, but so what a chorus is really, it's where you have like a vibrato mixed with the dry signal. And because I already have a dry signal on path 2, and this is coming on 3 and 4 in stereo, to make that sound, I actually have to use a vibrato effect, and it blends together. So here's my stereo chorus sound. And that is, so I'm adding a vibrato in the Quad Cortex. Which a vibrato by itself is actually moving the pitch up and down, but when you blend it with the dry signal, it sounds like a chorus. I have this other effect as well, which I'm not sure. I haven't messed around with it in a while. I'm trying to get a rotary. The Quad Cortex's rotary is not the greatest in my opinion. So if you have any recommendations on how to tweak that, let me know. Because I like rotary, but it's kind of hard to get it dialed in right for this setup for some reason. This is the only way I could figure out how to do this. There might be another way in the Quad Cortex, but I needed to mute that path since it's all parallel paths happening here. And so I use these little utility volume controls to help mute paths. And I just program the buttons on the Quad Cortex to change whenever I add them on. So right now you're not hearing a stereo delay. So I'm going to hit G. And as you saw, when I hit G, it turns this off and then allows this delay to happen. So listen. Now I have a stereo delay. Put the chorus back on. And then also, so I'm going to take the room reverb off. I have a plate reverb. So right now you're hearing a mono delay in the middle, a plate reverb in stereo, and then stereo delay happening. Right? But if I mute the Quad Cortex, all you're hearing is this. And the Quad Cortex, if I solo the Quad Cortex, so here's just the Quad Cortex. Here's the chorus. And then I blend back my dry guitar with it. So then if I go play a backing track from YouTube, All right, well, I hope you enjoyed this video. That's been the kind of walkthrough of the best silent rig, at least I've ever played. And most of the times, I'm just listening through headphones here at home, out of the audience interface here, and I'm literally playing a 50-watt tube amp into the Suhr Reactive load box, into my interface, through the distressor, through the quad cortex for all my wet effects, which I'm still dialing in. And that's the rig. And so when I record too, a couple reasons why I love this setup before we go is I wanted, number one, I wanted effects in real time that I didn't have to bring up Logic and use plugins for. Not obviously, I think plugins honestly probably sound better, but I want to be able to use my, let me show you. So Audient interfaces, at least this one has this mixer. So I can mix all my inputs right here. I don't have to bring up Logic. I can monitor real time with no latency or anything like that. So I don't have to worry about buffer size within my DAW. All right, well, that's been the run through of what I think is the best silent at-home guitar rig possible. Let me know what you guys think down below, and share any recommendations, and also share what your rig is. I'm curious to see what you guys are using, especially if you have a silent setup at your house. So let me know down below, and I'll see you guys next time.